word to wise. Grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about the Marvel Comics character, Toxin. That's right, we're going to break this character down, tell you everything you need to know to hold an intelligent conversation about this character, and more right now. But first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I drop new videos multiple times throughout the week and live stream every Saturday, and that way you don't miss anything. Also, if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button and share the video all over the place, because it really helps the channel out. That said, let's talk about Marvel Comics Toxin. Toxin, real name unknown, first appeared in Venom vs. Carnage #2 in 2004 and was created by Peter Mulligan and Clayton Crane. Toxin is the spawn of the Carnage symbiote from during the Venom vs. Carnage arc, where Carnage was preparing to give birth to the new symbiote, one he wasn't keen on keeping track of and was more than prepared to kill. This symbiote first attached itself to police officer Pat Mulligan, and before Carnage could kill the symbiote spawn, and thus Toxin was born. Toxin is the 1000th symbiote within its lineage and was initially thought to be the strongest of all symbiotes up to that point, save for the character Null, who at the time had yet to be introduced into continuity on any official level. Interesting sidebar to the creation of Toxin is that symbiotes often birth new spawns, typically in response to a greater stimuli, something that is happening in the universe around them that is considered a major threat or major event. In his father Carnage's case, it was the events leading up to the Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War arcs, where Thanos was about to get his hands on the Infinity Stones, thus kickstarting those major comics events. That in particular led to Carnage's birth, where in Toxin's case, it was the event Avengers Disassembled. Toxin possesses the same abilities of Carnage, only in his case, he's more powerful than Carnage was initially prior to Absolute Carnage. His levels of superhuman strength are off the charts, making him stronger than both Venom and Carnage combined. To put this in perspective, Venom has been known to lift at least 70 tons, whereas Carnage has been more known to lift at least 80 tons. Neither of these numbers is their absolute limit, and the same goes for Toxin. Just like with Venom and Carnage, the more mass that the symbiote takes on, the stronger they become. This level of strength also allows him to not only lift massive amounts of weight, but also to strike with enough force to rattle even the strongest and most durable opponents, as well as increase the strength in his leg muscles, allowing leaps of incredible height and distance. When Toxin increases his mass, not only does he grow taller and stronger, but his fangs and claws become much longer, with his claws even becoming more curved and sharper. He can also grow symbiote tentacles capable of attacking and restraining his opponents, and he's even able to morph his body to stretch himself even while attached to a human host. Or he can even create certain weapons from his symbiote, like axes and shields, similar to Carnage. The Toxin symbiote can also use this same ability to also render himself into a camouflage state, either appearing to be a normal set of clothes for its wearer, hiding its true nature from those observing him, or he can use it to render himself completely invisible. He's also been able to mimic the appearance of other people. These are also traits inherited from both Venom and Carnage. Like Venom, he's also been able to body morph wings that allow him to fly. His speed is also superhuman in nature, allowing him to move faster than any human, peak level or otherwise, and his superhuman stamina allows him to exert himself longer than any human could. He's been known to overexert himself for up to 48 hours before becoming noticeably tired. His agility and reflexes are also considered superhuman in nature and are unmatched by any normal human being. His durability is superhuman as well, and he is far more resistant to pain and harm than not just Venom and Carnage, but also Spider-Man. Both Carnage and Venom are incredibly resistant to high-caliber bullets and energy blasts, as well as high-impact strikes and even falls from terminal velocity. Toxin is even more resistant to them than Venom and Carnage. Not only is he resistant to the damage that can come from such instances, but he rarely, if ever, feels any pain from them, if and when he even would. He's withstood attacks from both Venom and Carnage and even Spider-Man without so much as flinching. That said, he still suffers from the same patented symbiote weaknesses such as fire and high-frequency sounds, only for him, it's to a much lesser degree. Just like any other symbiote, he does have the ability to psychically bond with his host and learn anything they know. Even just by making physical contact, he can do this even with other symbiotes, not just humanoids. He can also detect any offspring of his, similar to how Venom could always detect Carnage, but just like in their case, this is something that can be blocked if Toxin wishes to do so. This ability to track isn't even limited to just offspring, but also anyone. If Toxin has the scent of his target, he can track them with near perfect accuracy. Speaking of detection, he also possesses Spider-Man's patented spider sense ability. This is a direct result of being an offspring of Carnage, who in turn is an offspring of Venom, who gained this ability from his time being bonded to Spider-Man. This also allows him to nullify Spidey's own spider sense, making it possible to sneak attack him. This is also a trait both Venom and Carnage have as well. And like Venom and Carnage before him, thanks to Spider-Man, he also possesses Spidey's abilities to crawl on nearly any surface or terrain imaginable, even if the surface is slippery terrain, and he can generate his own form of webbing that is unlimited. And much like Spidey's, he uses it to swing from one area to another, as well as make tendrils that can attack at range, as well as immobilizing his targets. This organic form of webbing is incredibly strong and is likely more powerful than both Carnage and Venom's version of the same thing. His main bread and butter are his fangs that, as you'd probably imagine with the name like Toxin, are poisonous. This is a power that he inherited from Venom. He possesses a regenerative healing factor that is so potent that most injuries that would kill or cripple a normal human being can be fixed in a matter of hours or, at worst, days. Toxin can even cure just about any illness or disease that afflicts the human body, even those that cannot be cured by modern medicine such as cancer. Toxin has had multiple hosts over the years, first starting with Pat Mulligan and sticking with Pat for a good bit, even trying to become a hero in his own right. Despite being a newborn symbiote whose power dwarfed that of his predecessors, he was for all intents and purposes a child. He was inquisitive and always eager to learn why things were happening or why things were the way they were. Toxin, on his own, had a fairly morbid sense of humor and was not shy about savaging his opponents. He reveled in violence, and it was something that led Pat to fear that Toxin was fated to become like his father, Carnage. Mulligan tried his best to teach Toxin that violence and killing weren't necessary, that he could overcome his baser instincts. Toxin also, in turn, tried to convince and even in some cases tempt Mulligan to be aggressive and violent and to kill just like Toxin would, even going as far as to hinder Mulligan when using the Toxin symbiote to put him in a position where his life was in real, actual danger and he would be forced to admit he needed Toxin's help. Despite its childish nature, Toxin did in fact care about Pat, even going as far as to foil his attempt to kill himself and telling Pat that his life mattered and that he was better than that. It's debatable whether or not Toxin genuinely cared or if he was simply protecting his investment, as perfect symbiote hosts are hard to come by, but Toxin did in fact learn a lot from his time with Pat, and the lessons that Pat taught him carry on in Toxin even today. Eventually, Pat was killed by the demon Blackheart. Toxin would then be taken away, contained in a secret facility in Las Vegas, only to later fall into the hands of the Crime Master, who would force Toxin and Eddie Brock, who was no longer Venom at the time, to bond together. Toxin was in a different place then. Traumatized by the death of Pat, Toxin lost all sight of the lessons he learned from his former host, indulging in his anger at Pat's death and unleashing his rage on anyone who crossed his path. It also didn't help that he already hated Venom and used this to fuel his war against him. Speaking of Venom, together the pair would go on to face off with what was at the time the current Venom, whose host was Flash Thompson, the once bully of Peter Parker, who later turned into a hero. Eddie and Toxin made for an effective, if not poor pairing, but there was much animosity between them. All that aside, Flash wanted to stop Toxin, but not kill Eddie Brock, and in doing so set Toxin on fire, giving Eddie a chance to be set free. Though this was short-lived, as Toxin snatched Eddie Brock back into the flames to die alongside him. But this was not the end for the two. They both ended up surviving. A little sidebar here, a little story arc was originally planned to take place after this encounter, something that was seeded during the Venom series called The Spawning. Rick Remender and Cullen Bunn had planned for Toxin to eventually unleash a metric ton of symbiote spawns, but this never occurred. The intention was for these spawns to take over the Earth and kick off a major symbiote event called War of the Symbiotes. But due to plans changing, this was scrapped. With that plan gone, Toxin would later resurface despite being presumed dead, as would Eddie Brock. Now, with both of them alive and together again, they managed to work out their differences at least long enough to get revenge on Venom for torching them, and then Toxin and Eddie would settle up their debts afterwards. This wouldn't last long, however, as Flash was able to make Eddie understand that he wasn't the bad guy he was thought to be, and that Flash wasn't his enemy. They would eventually work things out, and Eddie would resume his role as a lethal protector, only not as Venom, but alongside Venom as Toxin, now that he's allowed himself to truly bond with the Toxin symbiote. Eventually, Toxin would temporarily go away for a while after Eddie was finally arrested by the FBI. He would be injected with the new symbiote inhibitor drug that nullified Toxin until given an antidote, allowing the FBI to keep him in check. During the Carnage Volume 2 series, however, the Toxin symbiote would later be given to Jubulile Van Scotter, who was the host of the Rays symbiote. Together with both Rays and Toxin at her command, she fought against Chthon, seemingly destroying herself as well as Chthon and both Rays and Toxin in the process. We would later learn during the events of King in Black this was not the case. Toxin was in fact still alive. This is also where we would learn he had now bonded with the character Bren Waters, a teenager. Toxin always had a sense of humor, even if it was a morbid one, but under Bren's influence, his sense of humor became less morbid and almost more in line with Spider-Man's. The two argue and bicker like a married couple, but unlike previous bondings, Toxin genuinely cares about Bren and his feelings on a level that I would dare say rivals or even dwarfs his respect and his caring about Pat, even going as far as to help Bren save his dad, despite the fact that his dad tried to kill Toxin. After the battle with Chthon, Toxin was no longer in peak condition and was considerably weaker than he was before, but still strong enough to take on the likes of brood human hybrids and the supervillain jailers, the Guardsmen. Speaking of Guardsmen, his current host, Bren Waters' father, was one of the Guardsmen that they took on. Since then, he's gone on to appear in the recently wrapped up Extreme Carnage story arc, where he teams up with Silence and Agent Anti-Venom to stop a recently returned Carnage once and for all. That said, Toxin has appeared in some media to a degree, but not very much. We know that the Pat Mulligan version of Toxin appears in Marvel War on Heroes, and the Eddie Brock version of Toxin appears in the video game Marvel Heroes. Not to mention, we know that a version of Toxin shows up in LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2, referred to as Carnum, and is a fusion of Venom and Carnage, not so much the spawn of Carnage. And both Pat Mulligan and Eddie Brock versions of Toxin appear in the game Spider-Man Unlimited. Beyond that, the only other medium that Toxin appears in is a bit of a spoiler for a recently released movie, so I'm gonna tell you right now, if you care about spoilers for such things, I would suggest you walk away now. I'm gonna give you just a few seconds while I'm talking and pontificating about it to get away, because I'm gonna go ahead and give a spoiler for Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Skip ahead a minute or so and you'll be past the spoiler. In the movie Venom, Let There Be Carnage, the character Pat Mulligan is portrayed by Stephen Graham, an actor who some of you may know for movies like Snatch or Hellboy, Rocketman, or even TV shows like Boardwalk Empire and Peaky Blinders. In the movie, Pat Mulligan is, for all intents and purposes, just a police officer, but shortly before the film's end, he does wind up becoming Toxin. Now, normally when I do this, I like to pick an actor I think could play this character on the big or small screen. Honestly, I'm not going to do that because, well, it's already been done, and that's all I'm really going to say about that. However, I will, as I normally like to do, give some recommended reading. I recommend you check out, of course, the story arc, Venom vs. Carnage, number 1 through 4, to see the birth of Toxin. I also recommend you check out Toxin's solo series, Toxin Volume 1, number 1 through 6. I also recommend you check out Venom Volume 2, issues number 12, issues number 17 through 22, and then from there, issue number 30, as well as issues number 32 through 37. I also recommend you check out the series Carnage Volume 2, as Toxin makes regular appearances throughout that series. Toxin is a very interesting character, and especially with everything that has recently occurred with the movies as well as Extreme Carnage, it's nice to see Toxin getting a little bit more love than what he used to. And I would definitely say I think Toxin is a far more nuanced and interesting character than the character he spawned from, being Carnage. That said, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share it all over the internet and with all your friends so that they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to the Marvel Comics character Toxin. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about the Marvel Comics character Toxin. Have you always known about him, or are you today years old finding out about him? Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.